Works Committee and the Public Safety meeting to order. The motion I'd like to make a motion to consider approval of the minutes of the special public safety meeting held on August 8th and August 29th, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 3, discuss construction management and owner representation services for construction at Fire Station Number 2. Over to John, you want to handle that?
Yeah, I can discuss it. Again, as we discussed at the previous committee meeting, the RFQ for construction manager owner's rep for the construction of Fire Station 2 and eventually 3 was put out on the street last year. We've brought back, I believe, 16 respondents, and after interviews, we recommended 2 finalists here, and we're looking for the committee discussion and approval based on those 2 recommendations.
Mike and Bill?
Yeah, the last meeting, Dave, a resident asked about one of the companies that was put back on after it was 6. There was originally 6 from the email from Steve Tilton. And then you said an elected official had him put back on. Who had him put back on?
Well,
Louis Grafen put back on?
Grafen, yeah. As I mentioned, we always consult with the chairman of the committees when we discuss consultants like this. So I think Steve Tilton talked with Trustee Yonker about this. So.
Okay.
Just for clarification on that, there was 2 firms that we were with discussion with the committee chair. We had Leah Pardo and Grafen were 2 of the other respondents that we did add to our interview list. At the time of that discussion, no interviews were initially conducted. They were just added to the interview list.
So 3 were added?
2 total. 2. Grafen and Leah Pardo to the recommended 4, I believe, or I'm sorry, I apologize. It was 6 initially recommended prior to coming to official committee, and then we upped that to 8 interview firms.
Good. The only, looking at the, John, thanks for redoing the breakdowns. It looks like after you broke it all down, Wegman is $70,000 more, but that's not including the general requirements, which is $130-some thousand more, correct?
So one of the biggest difficulties we had with finalizing these recommendations is the fact that each one of these firms structure their pay items a little bit differently. It was very difficult to try to compare apples to apples on these firms. One thing we were able to do with follow-up discussions with these 2 finalist firms was the fact that the term general requirements is a very broad term, and what one firm does put on their general requirements, the next may not. So we broke down what they consider general requirements, as you see in the table attached to the minutes here, and what Wegman included in their general terms and what Grafen did and what they did not equally. So some of the things that were included by Wegman that were not included by Grafen may essentially show the difference in what your cost and gap in the general requirements is.
So we would see it on the back end.
There is a good chance that if certain things like maybe dumpsters, other things that were not charged on the front end for general requirements, they would be essentially charged to the subcontractors, which ultimately would come back as a charge to the the owner.
Okay, so the $70,000 that we as it sits now does not include all the extra general requirements that Wegman is performing. Like I think that sheet you said they're performing. They'll supply security. That includes all the costs of the dumpsters. There was some other stuff. So basically, it's the difference is now is the extras that they're including on the front end, we're going to see on the back end, because when you do an RFQ, I'm assuming for the subs, we're going to see it then reflect in their price, which essentially could raise this number, I would assume.
Possibly.
And-
Keep in mind, though, with the professional service like this, these numbers are all just estimates based on what we, tailor this project to eventually be.
Right, because they're not working on actual plans as
No,
of yet.
no,
They
they're
haven't
not.
talked to an architecture at all or anything.
And that's kind of how, a construction manager at risk is structured for us to, work with them hand in hand from the initial aspect to help coordinate those plans and help coordinate our efforts with the architects. So we have someone with the experience and those qualifications to convey what we're trying to give to the architect. So these numbers can all be swayed up or down as the project continues. If you see on the spreadsheet here, we did an estimate of $300 per square foot of a facility. That number is kind of just the center of the line. If we decide that we want higher level, let's say kitchen appliances, that number could be raised in an area of the facility where in the apparatus floor maybe we don't want a $300 per square foot allowance. So we can offset those costs. But again, none of these numbers are really going to be set in stone until you enter that phase of the construction. So ultimately what you're looking for is this professional service with these averages right here, and this is what we're going to have as an average, and you're going to have some type of contingency allowance you also have to figure in on every phase of this construction.
Well, that makes sense.
So, on the construction phase, Wegmans 208 and Grafin is 247.8. If I have hopefully I have the updated sheet.
That's what I have.
Okay. So the difference is, what it looks like, is the general requirements. So if we're not going to compare apples to apples, the only way to do that is subtract where the difference is, I would assume. So if Wegmans going to pick up all these extra costs and it's going to cost them $149, and Grafin's is going to be $13, and the other costs will be in on the back end, the only way to make this a fair quote would be subtract the general requirements, and that's what makes it apples to apples. Otherwise, if one company's putting stuff in that another's not, it's kind of hard to compare it. And the other part that, going back to the RFQ process, how again did you say Grafin got put back in?
Again, when we do preliminary reviews of these submittals, we'll have a discussion with the committee chair, with our committee, not the public safety or public works committee, but our apprised group of people, as our subcommittee, and say these are the ones that seem to meet the criteria, and we'll have brief discussions on who we feel may meet criteria.
But
there's things that we may miss, that information that may be given to us secondhand, or maybe just information we're missing in the packet that someone else caught that we didn't. So again, the discussions are had after the fact, and again, it's just a recommendation to add them to a interview list.
So that happened afterwards, because the one email that was included in here from, I think, Hannah had the 6 companies, or from Steve Tilton had the 6 companies. So then the 2 companies were added after you guys selected the 6.
When the subcommittee selected the initial 6, the additional 2 were recommended to add to that list.
Okay. Looking at the RFQ, the only issue that I'm having is, if you look at step 2, it says the committee may conduct interviews with 2 or more of the top-ranked consultants determined from step 1 to get a more comprehensive view of qualifications. Step 1 was the committee will evaluate and rank the submittals, which you guys did, and you ranked the top 6. Then after step 2, after the interview process, step 2, if the village will select the top-ranked consultant and then open the fee proposal. The fee proposal will be used as the basis for negotiating, leading to the final contractual scope of services and contract fee. Should the evaluation process not result in a clear choice as the top-rated consultant, the fee proposal then may be used to assist the committee in determining its final recommendation. So reading the way the RFQ process is supposed to work, step one was determined. We had six companies that your committee selected. The one I think is an assistant deputy chief, right? Is that what his title is? Doug Irwin? Assistant chief. We have public works director, and we had assistant village manager. So they chose, after step one, then step two, you're supposed to pick the top ranked consultant, which I don't have that sheet with me, sorry, but I thought that Wegman scored across the board from when you guys did your research and interviews as the top rated company, which therefore I would assume that they are the top ranked firm. And then after you break the pricing down, if you subtract the general requirements, Grafin is at $449,860, and Wegman would be at $384,320. So Grafin actually then is about Wegman's about $66,000 cheaper once you subtract the general requirements, since we're not comparing apples to apples, we're comparing it, say apples to oranges. So once you subtract the actual part that is the hiccup, where certain contractors are covering some things and some aren't, I think that's your bottom line. Wegman's at $384, Grafin's at $449. It's $66,000 more. And then once you tack in the general requirements, Wegman's only $70,000 more, and plus all that's included, the whole process of the job, every dumpster, the security of that site throughout the whole process is covered. Where I thought Grafin wants the police department to take care of that, where they're picking up all these extra costs. So at the end of if their requirements are even close, Wegman's still going to be about $50,000-$60,000 cheaper once you add in the extra general requirements.
Well, I think it's an unknown factor, Mike, because you have these things that are not included, trader security, porta potty, et cetera, et cetera. When if you add those up and the cost of those things, it may very well be still less than Grafin, not knowing the X factor of what those things cost. And keep in mind, though, when we first did all this, the bottom line was that Grafin was $140,000 cheaper, okay? Now you give them a second round, and they lower their price down after they had the second chance to go over it all.
Actually, I think Grafin's price went up a little, didn't it, John?
Both companies adjusted their
bid it
price.
cheaper?
They were both offered the opportunity to sharpen their pencils a little bit on this resubmittal. So I believe both companies adjusted their pricing. I can't tell you without looking at the other
Yeah, I think
spreadsheet,
you're correct on that.
And I think you would agree, Bill, both of these companies are great companies. If I'm going to build a bank, Grafin is the top notch. They have nothing but great pictures, banks, little terminals, for airports. But when it comes to a firehouse, the best, according to our RFQ, the best top-ranked consultant is who we're supposed to pick without opening up the pricing. So I don't even think the pricing should have even come into play, and it did. It's based on the ranking of the consultants, which Wegman supersedes the qualifications for this firehouse that we're looking for. And then, like you said, the difference is the general requirements. I mean, it's $136,000. That's a lot of money. So if you take that out, they're way ahead of the game, because all the unknowns, like Bill was mentioning, we're going to pay that on the back end through the subs, because that was their answer. Who's paying for this? Well, that'll be billed out through the RFQ on the subs.
Now, and again, please understand that when the subcommittee presented this memo to the committee here, we did not use dollars here to make our recommendation. We used how it was written out in the RFQ based on what we were doing our scoring and our opinion of what company had the best background for fire station construction, as it was spelled out in that RFQ. And that's why we're bringing this to committee to discuss the dollars.
And which company did you guys rate as the most qualified?
Again,
consultant?
as you see in our memo, I think the last sentence here is that the change in cost does not change the staff's recommendations for our opinion of the top-rated firm, which is Wegman.
And I think it's also important to understand is the final cost whoever you pick, we're really not going to know the final cost until we actually design the building.
Right, you got to talk to an architecture.
This was an exercise in trying to compare based on the information we have now. But, when we design this and when, we don't know exactly what we're going to design it, I don't want anybody to think that this is cast in stone, whoever you pick. I mean, we try to come up with a comparison marker, but it's going to really depend on the final square footage, what goes into the building, and, any other contingencies. So whatever we vote on, I don't want people to say, yes, this is, we voted for this because we're at this price. That's going to depend on how the building is designed.
You got to understand that
qualifications.
with a construction manager at risk, the way that's defined is you have someone that's not only offering you a professional service for the design and phasing of that, but you're also offering construction manager services, which is now essentially a type of general contractor. He's helping with the bidding. He's helping with that. If you're trying to get an idea of where the line delineates between professional services and construction services, you look at your pre-construction design and your completion phases where you have man-hours offered to the village for their services. And then from the general requirements on down is where they're making lack of a better term, a guesstimate without that set of plans on what a 9,500 square foot facility at a $300 per square foot cost is going to take for their services, and from that point on. But again, from the line above general requirements on up on this table is what their man hours and their professional services are going to be offered to the village, where those numbers are probably going to be a little bit closer to being what we're going to see. Everything from the general requirements on down, as village manager here offers, is going to be adjusted based on our design.
So basically, though, as I understand it, they're working for us.
Yes.
They're working for the village. So they have to, get things approved through the village and the different people and yourself and the rest before they do anything. Okay?
This is the benefit of a construction manager at risk over a design bid build process.
Right.
We are no longer using a general contractor that can hit us with change orders after the fact. Anytime an architect doesn't draw exactly what he needs to draw into that design, we're now going to get hit with the extra charges for requests for information. We're going to get hit with the extra charges because every nut and bolt wasn't drawn into that design. The construction manager at risk helps us close that gap of those possibilities of change orders.
So we need, go ahead.
No,
You're
you
older.
go first.
You're
Go
older.
Okay, well, since we're going to be so basically, the construction manager, that was pretty funny. The construction manager, like you said, on those type of issues, has to be pretty on their game. They have to be pretty equipped and experienced with firehouses to look for stuff like that.
With any construction.
Have we talked to either the construction manager companies to ask them if they dealing with their buildings have they come across where they've had to go through the plans for the architect, or maybe help change something that they were unaware of because it's not the architect, maybe they missed something? Or
Well, I think both of them did offer that information, that they are there to help with the design of the facility. And we have a level of expertise within the village, but obviously this is to help close the gap between what we have to offer from within the village to the level of an architect. And that again is the point of having a construction manager, so we can help fill that gap if we personally miss something in the design phase that we feel needs to be seen in that design phase. Because things will happen that if we don't catch it as as just employees of the village, this person or this firm that is hired is supposed to help us catch that and prevent any type of change orders in the future.
So Grayson
both firms are going to boast that they are going to do that for us.
Right. But Grayson is used to doing that with us because we have experience with them, even when they built the Park District, the rec center on 171st Street. So they're used
Grayson
to
has
dealing
done
with
that
us.
for that facility, and Wegman has boasted that they've every one of their firehouses has come in under budget. So again, both firms, that is a sales point for them to say that they're gonna push as much as possible to bring our projects in under budget.
So whatever's the site, what we really need is an architect that has built firehouses.
Yeah, definitely,
Basically.
that is a key component in this process.
Yeah, so that's the architecture we need as well.
But again, we need the construction manager that is going to have have that capability of going over this with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that even the architect didn't miss things, because maybe it's not a component of firehouse construction that we're asking for, it's just a request. And if that request was made but didn't make its way all the way to the architect drafting table, we need someone that's going to follow through with those checks and balances.
The Wegmans here. Can I ask one of you guys a question? Sure. Would you mind? Can you go up so everyone can hear you? Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for coming.
Sure.
By any chance, your brochure of all the firehouses that you guys have been the construction manager for, have you run into problems where, like John was talking, where the architect basically is in charge and responsible for designing it and stuff? Have you come across where architects have missed stuff, where just maybe because they're not familiar with something? With firehouse, where that would make that much of a difference with the experience with firehouses compared to not building any firehouses?
Well, yeah, I think it's very important to have a CM on board that has done firehouse construction. Firehouses are unique. They're a unique structure, just like a dental facility or anything else. There's been, we're having done 15 of them. We're kind of keen to some of the problems that we've encountered in the past that we weren't able to catch at first, but now they've become a sticking point with us. And so one of them was a fire station we built in Oswego, and the apparatus bay floor was built with radiant heat in the floor, and that was the architect's design. It's a very efficient way to heat it. The problem is that as it turned out, the architect didn't design a good heat recovery into it. So when the garage doors open up in the wintertime, okay, that space gets cold very fast. So you have to have a good heat recovery system to kick in first, and then once it warms up, then that system shuts down, and then your radiant floor again operates more efficiently. So what we ended up having to do was go in and put in a secondary heat recovery system in there, some gas-fired unit heaters. So again, that's something that, having been through that experience, we can make sure that doesn't happen again here. That's something that we would look out for. You're right. I mean, the design, it's very important to have an architect who's designed firehouses. That's every bit as important as having a CM, but to me, having a CM that's been involved too is just as important, because, again, one other example is like the flooring of an apparatus bay. I mean, we've done all sorts of different flooring applications that the architects have specified that they felt were good floors. Through our experience, we've learned not all of them are good floors. A couple years where the tires are, some of the flooring is peeling up. We know which ones are the good floors to put down on your apparatus bay. You've also got, your vehicle exhaust systems in the apparatus bays that are different depending on, the age of your apparatus, what kind of emissions they're throwing out. There's a lot of discussion that could happen here depending on what you need for your vehicle exhaust that could ultimately save you a lot of maintenance dollars down the road, depending on what system you might choose. We're very sensitive to the living quarters for the firemen. There's all sorts of different ways of doing their bunkhouses, and we've had experience with doing all sorts of different kind of ways. So we can interject the things that we've learned from other firehouses that they've found that have worked and things that haven't worked. How the bunkhouses are lit. How high do the walls go up? Are they individual bunk rooms, or are they, a group setting? So there's all sorts of things that I think as a construction manager we can bring to the table. It's just another set of experience, another set of eyes that an architect would have. And again, we've worked with probably 5 or 6 different firehouse architects, so you know, we kind of know who the ones are that do a good set of plans and who do a good job. So I think that's some of the benefits that having a CM that's done fire stations versus one that hasn't would be to the village.
How did you manage to do your very first one? I mean, how did you get all that information? If you can remember back, you know, I mean.
That was before my time.
there's-
Our company's been in business for 60 years, so.
Oh, congratulations.
That was, the first couple were before I started, so. But I've personally been involved with 8 of them, so. And, you know, after a while, you just kind of learn the little nuances of them, so.
How about your contractors? Do you have local contractors in this area that you use?
Well, I think we showed during our interview process, we did a presentation about how important it is for us to hire local contractors, and I think we gave a list of all the local contractors within a 10-mile radius of the village, contractors that are in our database, and then we also highlighted a bunch of them that we've already had a relationship with, so.
Sorry, John has it. So,
Oh.
so you did submit a list of contractors that are local that you would use. So you're not going to be using people from, you know, all the way up north, all the way,
We're going to key on soliciting people from this area, yes.
that you've worked with though before.
Correct.
Okay,
And ones that we haven't,
okay,
sure.
okay. Do you have any questions, Chief? Anyone else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Like I said, the difference is with 70,000, John, not including the requirements, correct?
Rough math, I believe that's pretty close to where you're at, $70,000.
If you subtract the requirements, the unknown, since one has submitted what the cost would be and one haven't. And even if the cost of requirements is half of that, it's still going to cost more for Grafin compared to Wegman, who's the staff recommended and has experience doing this. So I'd make a motion to approve Wegman.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to have the staff go back over these numbers, and if we could get another trustee, Mike Mangan, if he could work with your staff. Is that possible? Trustee Magnan?
It's not his committee. Are we allowed?
Well,
to
we'd
do
like
that
to,
then?
we can add him to it.
It's not his committee.
Hold on, so first things first, we got a motion from trustee Glotz for, to advance Wegman forward. Is there a second on that motion? Let's handle that first. Is there a second to that motion? If there's not, that motion fails for lack of a second. So,
It's got to be a committee member. I can't.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're finding out.
yeah, here's the way I look at this. Again, you know, it being down to 2 committee members, you know, this ties all night, or I guess, you know, Trustee Brady, if you're to make a motion and not get a second, we're never going to get anything done. If you want this project to go forward, my recommendation would be to move forward with staff's recommendation to the full board, indicate on that, whatever agenda that's going to make it to, indicate that this came with no recommendation from the committee, and have the full board consider it and vote on it. That would be my thought. If you want to move the, you have other options, but if you want to move this project forward, that's all.
Yeah, we do.
If
He
you
doesn't-
don't, you know, you want to throw out all the bids, throw them out, redo it, whatever you guys want to do.
And I,
Go ahead, Dave.
I agree, and if you want to put it on the next board meeting in 2 weeks, and if there are additional questions from, you know, any of the trustees, in terms of the numbers, other things, we'll have a couple weeks to get you those answers. But I think the village attorney's plan makes sense.
Yeah. So, Trustee Mangan, if you don't mind, Mike, do you have any?
I think there needs to be more discussion. I firmly believe that some of the questions that have been raised today here, you know, do need to look at a budget. We need to look at what we think on a price per square foot. We can't do that without architectural plans. I really think there's some things that we have to talk about as a group of trustees. So I think, if you want to move it to the board, and that gives us 2 weeks, it gives us an opportunity to be able to talk between now and then.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
all I ask.
Yeah, I agree with,
We're putting numbers out here, and we don't have any architectural plans to do that. And I think from our view, we have a fiscal responsibility to make sure we stay within a budgetary number, and we have a square footage that we have to kind of agree to, and then what components that the chief wants in this that might be cost that we would have to talk about. So I think those parts are there. I don't think there's any argument here that we got 2 quality companies that can do this job. And from my view, whatever company we pick, it's got to, there's reason for both. And of course, someone that's done a firehouse 15 times, he's got the experience. But I think from our view, from the trustees, I think there's a few steps here that we probably should walk through too. Because we're going to do it, if we're going to do one firehouse, we want the same process to be if we do any other.
correct. But in regards to what Trustee Mangan said, we can't, I would assume we can't go forward with an architect until we don't know, unless we're going to wait until we find an architect and then do it apples for apples. Otherwise, I think we have to make a selection based on the qualifications from the RFQ. I get what Mike's saying, but how can we, without having an architect?
I'm not saying that we can't make a decision, Mike.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, I think the process that we're going through, we might want to evaluate what we're doing with it. It's not saying that we can't pick someone. It's just the fact of the matter.
Gotcha.
We got to have some things in place that I think are important, that we understand where we're going.
Because of the architecture, $300 a square foot may be too high or too low. Decide what you're going to build. Maybe the chief wants gold.
So you want to make a
fire
motion to
poles.
put this to the committee then, or to the board meeting then, so we get going here?
With no recommendation?
Yeah, so we want to
Right.
open it up to the public?
No, you just,
No,
Oh, yeah.
we got to get this.
you need a
Yeah,
motion.
so I make a
Bring
motion.
it to the board.
Make a motion to bring it to the October board meeting?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, receive comments from public. Anyone wish to address the board on this?
I just have a quick question. I know, Trustee Yonker, you recused yourself because Grayfin used you as a reference, I believe.
Correct.
Shouldn't Trustee Brady be doing that since Paul O'Grady sent a letter of recommendation in Grayfin's application?
If you do. Are you asking me?
Yes, Pat, sorry.
Because why? I'm sorry. I missed it.
Paul O'Grady, Trustee Brady's supervisor from the Orland Township,
They did.
submitted a letter of recommendation in favor of choosing Grayfin.
Okay.
That's his direct supervisor and boss?
Yeah, I don't have the ethics code in front of me. I don't think there's any ethics violation by that, by Trustee Brady. I haven't looked at it. I can, no. As
I
sit
just
here
was
right now,
curious
yeah.
because Trustee Yonker recused himself, and I know they used him as a reference, but I just kind of closed ties there. Just thought it was unusual, to say the least, and just curious more than anything else. Okay,
I can
thanks,
get back
Pat.
on it. I can look at it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to call the special meeting of the Public Works Committee to order. I'd like to make a motion for approval of the minutes of the special Public Works Committee meeting held on August 29th, 2017. Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
3, discuss post-1 sheet metal wall panel project bid award. John?
Yes, this one was presented out for bid because of some issues we're having with tuck pointing and some paint inside the facility. We found out that there was a wall flashing issue with the original construction that caused water to seep into the space in between the brick and block. And with IRS as the design engineer architect, we went out to bid and we're requesting committee approval on the bids as received.
Any questions on that? Looking for a motion that's on the agenda tonight, correct, John?
Yes, sir.
A motion to approve the sheet metal wall panel project bid as presented. Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Discuss holiday pole decor. Donna, you want to go over that?
Yes, I would like to present you 2 options for our downtown holiday pole decorations. As you know, we've been doing the roof lights in that garland wrapped around the, wrapped around the wreaths. And last year, when we installed the plastic planters, we did take off the arm brackets that were on there for the past 15-plus years. So we'd like to investigate 2 options to replace our whole holiday pole decor. So I give you options with live greenery, and then the second option is for a branded light pole decoration. Excuse me. So you will see option 1. Something that we could have designed by Ted's Greenhouse. They brought these to us with the top would include greens and dogwood sticks, winterberry, white top pine cones. Total cost would be approximately $90 per basket. The second option is slightly with additional things added to it: red sticks, berry stems, eucalyptus stems, large bows. That cost would be about $112 per basket. And a third live greenery option would be include some gift baskets and bows and just increase in size, about $146 per basket. A second option would be a custom lighted trumpet pole decor. These would be about 5.5 feet tall by 2.3 feet wide. Cost would be $575 each. Draw about 48 watts of power. There's a rendering of size on our pole and what it would look like in the evenings. So a couple things to note, that the pole decorations, we would have to take those flower containers down if we did the lighted decorations and then reinstall them in the spring. So we'd have to expend some labor costs there. We did, in this year's budget, put $45,000 in for this initiative. And note that Oak Park Avenue has 115 decorative poles. 173rd Place has 32 poles. North Street has 8, South Street has 13, and 66th Court has 2. We have in the past been decorating all of those light poles. So also the cost to purchase 60 lighted decorations, including the shipping, would be $37,300. And the vendor also offers an option, if we're so inclined, to purchase 180 under a 3-year rent-to-buy option. So some costs there for you. So one option is to, when you take into consideration the amount of holiday lighting that exists right in the downtown core with our large Christmas tree and everything that we have down there, we could install some live holiday greenery on the baskets right basically between Durbin's and the train tracks on both sides. And do some additional ones on North Street, South Street, 173rd Place. And that would require us to take down the remaining 48 containers and install light pole decorations as an option on the 63 remaining poles. That total cost would be $44,700. Second option would be to take down all the containers and install lighted pole decorations on 72 poles in the core and then work outward. For example, all the Oak Park Avenue poles between 171st and 178th, and then additional 10 on North Street, South Street, and 173rd Street, working our way outward from the core. So the total cost of that would be $44,800. We would, of course, with the lighted decorations, have the option to reuse the greeneries one time.
You couldn't reuse the other ones? I'm sorry.
The greenery, that's live greenery.
It's live greenery, so it's going to die.
It would be a one-time use.
That's good.
Do you have a preference on which recommendation, marketing standpoint?
I think I would prefer, from our preference, we would like to see all of it lit. We just think it would make a nicer presentation, but it would also look very nice to have the live greenery. Obviously, we could mix and match and do however we'd like to. These are 2 options, just for your thoughts.
And Kevin, we'd be installing these, Public Works could do this, the lights?
Yeah, I mean, we would have to install them, but, it's going to take maintenance on.
We could do it in-house, right, correct?
We could.
The biggest concern we had in-house was the baskets now. Added a lot of time to our labor as opposed to the existing. So we're looking at the possibility of whoever's going to be installing the live greenery would be also either removing or reinstalling the baskets annually. Like I said, it added a lot of labor-intensive work to our existing staff.
The quote didn't, it's all the
It did
public
not.
works.
This is just hard costs.
Committee have any preference on which option to do?
Just a question. I know it's not Christmassy, but the trumpets I know is Christmassy, holiday time. Too bad they don't have a guitar we could put up there to go with our new branding.
We actually had about 5 iterations on this, and we tried everything from our musical bug,
Yeah.
a couple things, but these made the nicest presentation from both sides.
Right. All right.
When you're driving down the street, and it just gave it more of that archway.
Sure.
So,
Sure. Just a thought.
of course. They did not.
Is there any preference? Mike, Bill?
I like lights. Site 3,
So that's option B.
option B.
Okay.
Trumpets.
Mike, any thoughts, preference?
No, they
Like-
both look good. It's just a matter of,
I'll make a motion to approve option B with all the lights.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Receive comments from the public. Anyone care to address the board?
Yeah, just a quick clarification. The last meeting, we were talking about the fountain, and there was some kind of discrepancy between Trustee Berg and Paula. I think Trustee Berg says that Lakota might be making a decision where it's going to be, and then Paula said she didn't know. So is it going to go where it is, where it was before, in case Lakota comes up with this elaborate plan and think that, they could think might think that there's a better spot for it? Do we know?
The fountain's going in exactly where it was. It's piping, electric, everything's there set up already, so.
Okay, at the last meeting, nothing was said. It was like between, okay, thanks.
Motion to adjourn the Public Works Committee meeting? Have a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mike?
Like to open the community development meeting at 6:45. Like to make a motion to open the meeting. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the Special Community Development Committee meeting held on August 8th, 2017.
Second.
All those in favor? Oh, sorry.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Number 3, discuss animal ordinance poultry. Ellen, would you please?
Trustee Glass, just as an introduction, this is a follow-up to our committee of the whole discussion, where we basically talked about whether there was interest in revising our current codes related to chickens. And again, from the board, this is really a policy decision. Ellen, actually, and this is a lot came from a recommendation Paula had made in a previous community she was in. We've got a series of potential recommendations. And again, the board can go a number of ways with this, and you have to decide whether or not I think you want to continue to allow them, which is a threshold. And if you do, what we've recommended is some recommendations we think that would address concerns related to licensing, sanitation, and the like. And so that's really what Ellen's going to kind of walk through now, is kind of one idea. And again, this is open for discussion with the board. So, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? It's my first time with your microphones. Thank you. So this was put together after a great discussion with Paula, with Ken, our code compliance officer, and then I used input from the hens for Tinley that had been provided to Paula, and put this together. Currently, the code reads, as you're well aware, that it's unlawful to keep poultry within 100 feet of any other building, basically. And in 2014, the discussion began on this, and there was a hiatus on enforcement. There are 7 open code complaints right now with the department, and as Dave referenced, Mr. Niermeyer referenced, at the August 8th COW, there was direction to provide a proposed licensing structure coming forward that would incorporate residents' concerns regarding the keeping of animals. So the goals, as this was drafted, were to eliminate the view and the noise for neighbors. And in it, it suggests a distance of 75 feet from neighbors' homes versus the 100 that's there right now. And I think this is a point to be discussed because as we're putting it out here tonight, it's all a point for conversation to begin from. The second goal is to prevent the nuisance. That's the sanitation of the coop, preventing predators. And then it creates a structure for some initial licensing, and then every year with a building permit to allow the coop, and every year after that, an annual inspection there where an officer would check for the placement of the coop in the chicken run, the screening of same, and the condition of same. So as this is drafted, it does call for reducing the setback from 100 to 75 feet. There's potential for an administrative review and allowing for a variance of up to 15, so therefore a 60-foot setback. And in your packet on the memo, there was a graphic showing that. I have this in the slide presentation. I'll get there. The chickens would be allowed on single-family detached homes, any of the R districts where there was a minimum of a 7,500 square foot lot. And the setbacks proposed for both the chicken coop and the run is again 75 feet from homes not licensed by the licensee, 10 feet from the licensee's own home, 10 feet from any lot line, and it would only happen in the rear yards. Only female hens would be allowed. 4 hens max is proposed. A building permit would be required for the coop. The big concern there is just safety and not having extension cords draped across a yard. And you do need power for chickens. You've got to keep them warm in the winter. You've got to keep their water from freezing. It suggests that the coops themselves be raised a foot up. So the picture on the left is an example of an elevated. You can just do a Google image and find lots of them. It also suggests that chicken tractors could be used. If you look, you'll see wheels on the right side. So whatever structure you have for your chicken run only, or your chicken run and your coop could be moved around the yard. And that helps with the vegetation so that one area doesn't see all the grass chewed and the vegetation gone. It does call for screening of the coop area using this cloth, as it's called, this 19-gauge wire on the right. It does a better job of keeping predators out. The chicken wire on the left keeps the chickens in, but not necessarily keeping the predators out. And the cloth or the screening on the coop would have to be buried on 6 inches flat and at least 12 inches deep so that the predators can't dig underneath. And that's a recommendation you'll find across the nation from folks that advocate the use of chickens. The licensing requirements that's proposed say the chicken tractors could be used. It says the chickens would be in a secured and contained container at all times, and the property would be maintained to prevent erosion. Screening of the premises is recommended with a solid screen of a 6-foot fence. This could be either on the whole lot line or just in the area that the chicken coop would move around in. And if there was more than 100 feet from neighboring homes, there could be consideration during the building permit process for a vegetative screen. The licensing itself is a mechanism. First, I'll get into sanitation. No hens in the home, no slaughter on premise, keep everything in a good condition, food stored in a predator-proof container, and again, if the hens were ill, they would receive medical attention or be culled from the flock. And the proposed licensing structure itself is modeled after what we currently do for dogs. So $50 a year, the application will contain those elements, name, contact, a site plan, and a description of the screening. And if the home were sold mid-year and the new owners wish to maintain the poultry, there'd be a $10 fee just to change the records so that we knew for next year's annual license. And their licenses would run per the fiscal year. And then if someone had chickens without having obtained the license, it suggests a $150 fee is a fine. The proposed annual inspection, as I referenced, would look at these items: the size, structural condition, and sanitation of the coop, making sure it's in the proper location and setback. Again, we're trying to prevent nuisance and noise and views for neighbors, and screening is intact as well. This was in your packet. This is showing a 75-foot distance from a coop potentially to other homes. And then this shows on this, where you have a 60-foot, you can see there's a garage in the way, blocking the view. So that is an area where you could potentially give the administrative variance. So I referenced that we talked to, that Paula had talked to the Hens for Tinley folks. And basically what's presented here is in agreement with their recommendations on care and handling of the hens. It doesn't necessarily agree, it's not in agreement. They recommended a smaller setback, and they did not suggest that we put the screening in place, the privacy screen. Everything else is pretty minimal, so I'd suggest that those may be two areas you'd wish to focus on in your discussion this evening as you provide direction for us. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for anyone?
Who would be enforcing this?
Recommend it would be the building permit would come through the Community Development Department. The annual inspection could be either a code enforcement officer or animal control.
Do we have any idea how many we have within the village now?
I'm only...
just to view the amount of work that would take to go to this level from a staff standpoint.
That I'm not aware of. I only know there are 7 open cases from which violations have been filed.
Okay.
Or I should say allegations of violation from neighbors. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve. Have a
Second. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Discuss number 4, prevailing wage policy for cell phone tower leases. This is something that I've been working with Attorney Conley with, and he helped me draw up a resolution. Pat, can you take over? Thanks.
As Trustee Glotz said, we've been working on this for a little bit. Actually started with former assistant manager Tilton, who worked on a lot of these leases, and we had found that there was a bit of gray area in, just for your guys' background, a little bit when you see those big cell phone towers, and they're on village land. We own the land, however, most of the time, the tower's owned by one company that's in the business of building towers, and all the gadgets up there are owned by your AT&Ts, your Verizon, and things like that. So, we lease the land to the folks that build the tower, and then they, I guess you can call it a sublease, their space on the tower to all these other folks. So, as you can imagine, oftentimes your AT&Ts, your Verizons, those folks, they need to get out there, change the equipment, update it, upgrade it, everything like that. And there's certainly rights in the lease to do that. However, a while back we were approached by some of the local unions about some of the work going on out there, and we had some very positive, long talks about that. I think a lot of folks assume that it was village staff out there doing that, or the village was paying for that work. We are not paying for that work. If there is village equipment on those towers, of course, the village staff will handle those. But for the AT&Ts, they do it themselves. So we had some long talks with the union about the prevailing wage and whether we could even enforce it. And there's a bit of a gray area in the law there on what should be paid. So what we kind of decided to do is the last lease that we had that came through was just to put language in there, because that's a good chance for us, the village, if we want this, for the folks working out there to be paying prevailing wage. Again, we can't control it. We can't make them by law do it. As opposed to when we go out, we go out to repave a street or something, by law, we have to make sure the contractor does prevailing wage. That doesn't necessarily apply here. So, our chance to do it is in the leases when they first come in and ink these leases for our land. So we've been doing that. That's been kind of the policy and things like that. And I know in working with Trustee Glotz and former Mayor Seaman a little bit, we'd always talked about getting it on paper so all of you can see it, vote on it. So again, this is just creating a policy basically that directs staff that if, and any of these leases that come through, there's language in there that you want to see language in there that says, for any of those tenants that are doing work, out there, that they pay prevailing wage. And that's part of the lease negotiation. They may not like it right away, but that's As you know, that's what this board does, it sets policy. So that's making it, abundantly clear that if you want that, your staff knows and we know to make sure to get those in the leases. And if they don't do it, then, when you get one of those leases, it'll come back to you and we'll say, they want that clause out. So pretty simple, something that's been done around here, but, we did want to get it on paper so all of you can see it and know what's going on out there. Any questions on it?
Yeah, any questions?
Pretty straightforward. You want to approve this, the ordinance is there, it'll be, if you guys approve it tonight, it'll be on your next meeting.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve it.
Second.
All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Receive comments from the public.
Can I talk about the chicken coop thing, or is that over?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh. I would like to know if they're going to have to take a class before they can bring chickens into their backyard. There is so much I have learned about raising chickens that I don't even want to know about. Okay? You have to know what you're doing. You can't just bring chickens into your yard. And I'd like to know if before they get a permit or a license to have a chicken coop, if they're going to have to take instructions. I mean, it's unsafe for the chickens, and it's unsanitary if you don't know what you're doing.
It's not part of the ordinance right now. There's no class, I don't believe, is there?
I'm not aware of any.
In my yard,
Doesn't say that.
No.
in my,
Yeah.
I don't know all these measurements, okay, but I live in a very small yard. And when I sit in my yard, the fence line is 15 feet away from me, and 15 feet, maybe 20, 15 to 20, and 15 to 20 from there is a chicken coop. I don't want to sit in my backyard in the summer and look at chickens and smell chickens and listen to chickens. If you want to have chickens, what's wrong with the way it was? With the 100 feet, what was wrong with that? I don't understand what was wrong with that.
It needs to come to the board for a full vote yet. This was just a committee meeting, so it'll be on the next agenda for a vote, so nothing's set in stone yet.
And if it is an ordinance already, if it's in fact an ordinance, why have I been living with this all summer?
Can I ask your name? I don't know who you are, I'm sorry. And maybe we can talk afterwards?
I'll wait and talk to you afterwards.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to look up your property
Because I'm really
on the map.
upset,
Sure.
as you can see.
Sure.
Okay? All right, I'll talk to you after.
Thank you.
Same problem, chicken coops. I brought you a picture of what I can see. The property is 100 feet away from me, but I can sit out in my yard, and this is what I see. He built the chicken coop. He had a small one. He built the chicken coop 3 times the size of what he had. It's the size of a shed. It's up on cinder blocks. If you go according to your ordinance that says if it's 100 feet away, you can have a vegetative screen, you would need evergreens, because come winter time, most bushes and trees lose their leaves. I don't want to live with this. I sit out in my yard, it's nice and peaceful, all of a sudden you've got a bunch of chickens cackling away. Why do I have to look at this? There was another neighbor who has 2 hens, very nice coop, cleans it every day. That's not what happens here. And you have an ordinance in place, but it's not being enforced. So what you put up there, this is a problem you still have to contend with, because even though it is 100 feet away, you need an awful lot of vegetation, and that's much bigger. You said it's 6 feet height. Is a fence going to cover that? This doesn't help my neighborhood.
The ordinance as written would require everyone to have a permit that met the licensing structure. That, from what you've described, would not. It does say that the vegetative screen could be considered, so you're right, they would be looking for evergreen or thickness of it. And it does indicate that potentially other buildings could be used, but that would have to be reviewed, and it would be reviewed based on the sightline and the privacy screening. There's no privacy screening for you right now, correct?
No, none at all. And even though I live in Old Tinley, our houses are not back to back. There's a huge area which floods. So if his chicken coop is not fenced in, and when it rains, last winter, I had water for 3 weeks on my property coming from this huge area. So anything that's washed into the area ends up on my property. Any yard waste ends up on my property.
Can I get your address afterwards also, please?
17.
You could do that afterwards.
All you gotta do is come to Old Tinley and look at the biggest opening. That's where I live.
Any more questions?
So we're pro-chicken, and it sounds like the complaints that we've heard tonight are from kind of inconsiderate neighbors. So we would like to urge you to reduce that 75-foot distance between buildings, because the problem is not a lot of houses have that amount between the houses where you could have a coop that would be successful. And we have had chickens. We don't have any now, but they are a benefit, and my daughter would like to present a few words as well.
I think we should be able to have chickens because you could save your money on buying eggs and you could just get them from your backyard. When your chickens are in your backyard, you know exactly what they were eating, like watermelon rinds, strawberries, spinach, and bread. And chickens are also easy to take care of. It makes me feel good giving some eggs to our neighbors and friends. Our chickens were quiet enough that most people were surprised they were there. Also, when my friends come over, they like to pet and feed our chickens. And eggs from my chicken coop are my favorite.
Thank you, honey.
Thank you, honey.
Out of the mouths of babes.
How you doing? I am not for the chickens. I wanted to find out, and I've talked to a couple different neighbors, and they wanted to know like the zoning ordinance on the livestock, okay? When we moved into Tinley, we had 100-foot lots. They were designed for residential area. If I want to have a chicken on my property, then what I should do, and I have investigated this, I should have like about an acre to acre and a half, because that gives them the opportunity for their growth and also for vegetation. Because I've talked to a couple exterminators. In my household, I've already had 8 mice, and it's because of the bedding of the hay. They lay it down. I mean, they try to do a good job, but they don't realize what the effect is for other people. And it's something that I have 2 daughters. Sometimes they get petrified to go in the backyard because there's mice. Now, it's something that I would recommend as a board. You said that there's about 7 or 8 people in the community that are raising chickens. What I would suggest to the board to go out to each individual home and see exactly if that fits in that space. Because a lot of you people, I mean, we're voting on something, but you know what, we're not looking at it as what it's going to have for our resale value on our home. If I go to put my house on the market and somebody looks and saying, hey, by the way, I see chickens in the next door neighbor, or they go around the block, they might value the neighborhood, and they might say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to live in this area, and it might devaluate the housing market. And I have seen it happen. And I know that Homewood has approved. Flossmoor has just recently disapproved on this. But people that I've talked to with livestock, they do recommend that there is an acre to acre and a half of land, because I do a lot in Indiana, and I see a lot of chickens, and I see a lot of opportunity for growth for there. But the only thing is, I've talked to a lot of the residents out there, and they said, you know, not to knock Tinley Park, but it's a small lot for chickens, 100-yard lot. Because you got to take into consideration, you have maybe a 100-foot lot, then somebody's got a shed, or somebody's got something like this, and you know what, you got to really take the zoning ordinance on the property. Because I'm thinking, in my neighborhood, I've been challenged by like 2 different neighbors. I mean, they're great people, but the only thing is, it's something that what they want to do is they're trying to impact things. I mean, I understand they've got younger kids, and I mean, it's great to bring up the chickens because, you know, but the only thing is, what's the effect going to have? From an exterminator point, you're getting a lot of mice, you're getting a lot of rodents, and if it's not treated, then what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to abate the area, just like they did in certain areas in Bridgeview with roach control and stuff like that, and they had to go to every single house. So, I mean, it's something we really got to consider this in Tinley, and the board really has to look at 7 or 8 homes in Tinley that has chickens and make their evaluation.
Thank you.
Hey, Bridget.
Hi, my name is Bridget Blees. I'm the person who started Hens for Tinley. I'm the one who had 3 hens in 2014 and started all of this. And I would like to, first of all, thank everybody for coming forward and for, you know, the persons who brought up their concerns, for bringing them up. These are certainly concerns. Rodents are a concern. You know, other things are a concern. Odor is a concern. Absolutely agree with that. If somebody has dogs, 2 dogs, and lets them run around the yard and they bark all the time, and they do their business in the yard, nobody cleans up after those dogs, and those are dogs, you will have a problem. It will smell, it will be noisy, and potentially even dangerous. You know, if there's no fence, and these are large dogs that are aggressive. And it's with other pets as well, not just with birds, chickens, with other pets as well. If they're not taken care of, they will be a problem, they will be a nuisance. If a dog, and I've had a situation like this, I've lived in Tinley Park for over 15 years, and I've had initially a neighbor, very, very nice person, very nice family, but they had 2 huge, big dogs, and every time I came out onto the property and I approached, you know, the property line, they acted like they were going to attack me. So I built a 6-foot wrought iron fence, and I put evergreens along this fence. So I can understand, you know, if somebody feels that, you know, something like this could be a problem. But I've had the 3 hens, and later on I took in a rescue chicken, and now I have 4. And I can assure you they can be kept in a manner where there's very little noise, a lot less noise than you would have with a barking dog. The hens, they cluck when they lay an egg. Aside from that, they're basically silent. In terms of odors, even in the heat of the summer, it can be kept in a way that there are no odors. I had a reporter over from the Chicago Tribune in the summer, and he you know, did an interview. This was a few years back. And I asked him, do you notice any odor? This was in the summer. And he had to admit that, no, he doesn't. And there were no flies or anything like that. So the chickens can be kept in a way where you don't have these problems. And this is where, you know, our ordinance comes in, where we have to structure it in a way that where we give guidelines to people on how to keep them in terms of sanitation and so forth. And I would just like to say something about the guidelines that you've read. It was very, very detailed, and I've written something detailed, but not like that, you know, in terms of using hardwood cloths instead of chicken wire, you know, putting a cover underneath so predators can't get in. But you know, this was more detailed than what I've mentioned. And I just would like to address predators really fast. In Tinley Park, we have what I consider a problem with coyotes. Now, there are residents who feel that coyotes are a natural part of the environment, and they were here first, and so they have a right to be here and so forth. I consider them a problem, and everybody has their own opinion on that, I guess. There's right now a situation where some of them have mange, I think it's called, where they lose their hair, and they have this contagious disease, and then there's rabies and other things, not to mention that they're dangerous. I mean, a coyote is the size of a German Shepherd, and they run around, and you know, if they have puppies, I would think they're dangerous. But within my yard, and my property is a little bit over, my property is over a quarter of an acre, so it's a little bit bigger than some other properties. But we've had a coyote once in all these years. We saw him sitting next to the chicken coop and staring them down. Aside from that, we did not have a predator problem. And I would say that having chickens does not attract predators to a yard more than any other yard would. I've read reports or posts on Facebook from people who are, you know, saying things like walking out there and they're laying around their yard, you know, like they own the place. So we don't have this. I never had that.
Hey, Bridget, can you finish, please? We're at like 5 minutes, and then we have a 4-minute ordinance. So we've been letting you, attorney's been letting you talk a little extra. So can you kind of?
Absolutely. I'm basically finished. Did you have any questions or no? No. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Yes, you're up. You guys are up. 7:15.
It's me.
You got 2 minutes. And then we'll put it to it. You got 2 minutes.
Who died? I know. That's what Paige used to do. It was from Vic. Worked there too. Vic was the manager. Oh, they probably know him. Johnny's probably there too. Luncheon.
Nothing good? Are we done with the meeting?
No, one more. Yeah, no, there's liquor, yeah. One more meeting.
All right, guys, I think it's time. I'd like to call the Administrative and Legal Committee meeting to order. We need a roll call?
No.
Just aye. Here, present.
We're good, Mike.
All right.
Here.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular Administration and Legal Committee meeting held on August 22nd, 2017?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is discuss Class B liquor license for In-N-Out Liquor. Does somebody want to talk to us about that? I understand it's a replacement license for an existing business?
Yeah, Trustee Panito, I drafted the ordinance, and I don't know the specifics of the company, but the ordinance, which is, if the committee approves it again tonight, it'll be up for consideration by the full board. And if, I know Mr. Zimmer, if I get anything wrong, they can certainly jump in, but it's my understanding that this is an existing business in the village that's in the process of moving their store. I believe in order to sign the lease on their new store, they're going to need the liquor license. That's why they're a little bit early in coming to the full board for this. So what we've done is we drafted the ordinance. You may notice the title's a little tricky, but we're asking the Board of Trustees to do tonight, if it gets out of this committee, is to temporarily raise the number of Class B licenses that are allowed, because as you know, we keep them capped, and that's why all the liquor licenses come to you. You have to vote to raise them. Temporarily raise that. And then if you look at the ordinance language, it indicates that the mayor will issue it once a certificate of occupancy is granted for the new place, so they have to be moved into the new place. And then simultaneously, when that happens, when the actual license is issued, we'll go ahead and decrease the old license, so you'll be back to that cap number. So,
But he's running the business now? And under our,
I believe the
under
old
existing
business, but
license?
you'll have to talk to these folks
Is
for
the business owner
specifics.
present?
I think there's a representative here, yeah.
They could do a better job now.
Well, no, I just,
No,
it's
talking about
kind of
business is
a,
good question.
how you doing? So
Good.
you have a liquor license now?
Yeah.
And I assume you want to keep that same license right up until the new store opens?
The new store is going to take me between 6 to 8 weeks
Okay,
to finish the construction, and I can't afford to keep that one closed until I'm done.
understood.
So I want to see if I'm approved here. If I am approved, I have the land also going to start the construction. When we are done, I got to come here, cancel George's. I don't need it.
Okay, so you're going to move this license to the new store?
Yeah.
Is the
Kind of.
size of the business basically the same?
It's 1,000 square feet smaller.
Smaller? The new one's smaller? Okay.
1,000 smaller.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
I was good with it, Mike. I
Okay, I just want to make sure it's,
Are you Mr. Swayze?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Make a
okay.
recommendation.
So does-
I'll make a recommendation.
do we have a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Receive comments from the public? Anybody have anything they want to say to the public? or
Okay, thank you
to
for
the
coming.
board?
Thank you, Mr. Swayze.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All right.